Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. It is that time of year. College football is coming really fast. And normally I wouldn't necessarily lead a show with college basketball on a day like today. But there is a story that is so big, and it doesn't feel big on the surface, but it really is kind of pretty big. It is so big and so important that I would be remiss if I did not discuss it on today's show to lead the show. And it has to do with our old buddy Bill Self and the Kansas Jayhawks. No big deal. Picked Kansas to win the national championship in the preseason last year. How about my Jayhawks? Caw-caw. But anyway, this story comes from, it's a report via Matt Norlander, CBS Sports. Matt did a great job on this story, credit to him. And the story basically came out was that over the last couple weeks, in what has quickly become the most important time in the recruiting calendar, June into July, into late July, Kansas University, KU, the Jayhawks, Fog Allen, the school has decided to pull Bill Self and his lead assistant off of the recruiting trail, and they did not allow them to recruit over the last couple weeks. Now, on some levels, that seems trivial. How important could it be? But it's actually really important, and here is why. Kansas is still in the midst of this years-long NCAA investigation stemming from stuff from the FBI trials that really started in 2017, 2018. And for the most part, Kansas has basically blatantly kind of stuck their thumbs and their nose up at the NCAA and basically said, we're not helping you at all. We didn't do anything wrong. We're not taking responsibility, whatever. The fact that Kansas pulled Bill Self and Curtis Townsend off of the road over the last couple weeks, it means one thing and one thing only to me. It means that they think the NCAA is about to drop the hammer on them, that they are about to get in trouble. And look, I get the idea that the NCAA has changed a lot over the last couple years, and I get that rules are a lot different now than they were even 3, 4, 5 years ago. But Kansas did, in fact, break major NCAA rules according to the letter of the law when the rules were in place back in 2017, 2018. And I believe that they could be in line for some real problems with the NCAA over the next couple weeks. Next couple years, really. Now, what I would say, listen, I don't want to get too much into what Kansas is accused of. We've hit on it a million times, but it's worth noting a few things. One, what Kansas is accused of, it's not really even an accusation, okay? Keep in mind that everything that I'm about to tell you that was found to have happened with Kansas, it didn't happen in an NCAA investigation. It didn't happen with some guy from the NCAA showing up in Lawrence and looking through phone documents. This all came out during the FBI trials over the last couple years in New York City. This all came out via federal wiretap. This all came out via the federal government. So what I'm about to tell you, in the grand scheme of FBI stuff, it really doesn't matter. But from the NCAA perspective, this is a big deal, and we got to talk about what Kansas was actually not only accused of, but found guilty of in a court of law. First of all, we've talked about it a lot. But while certain coaches have never been directly tied to anything, I'm talking about Rick Pitino specifically, there are text messages from Bill Self to TJ Gassinola, who was the head of Adidas grassroots basketball at that time. There were text messages that said, TJ, you got to help get me some dudes. You and I can interpret what that means, but I think we can all take a guess. There was also TJ Gassinola in court basically said that he helped get money to a handler for Silvio De Souza, a 5-star player. If you read the court documents, I'm not saying Bill Self directly had anything to do with it, but Bill Self talked to TJ Gassinola that day. Bill Self followed up after TJ Gassinola talked to Silvio De Souza's handler. So I'm not putting 2 and 2 together, but I'm kind of putting 2 and 2 together. And then on top of that, keep in mind Curtis Townsend, the lead assistant, he was caught on FBI wiretap, basically asking about Zion Williamson. That shows you how long this investigation has been going on. This guy was recruiting Zion Williamson and basically said, what has to happen to get that deal done? What do we have to do to get Zion? And so that really shows you how long this investigation has been going on, and by the letter of the law, how serious these charges are in the eyes of the NCAA. And again, I understand the NCAA is going through some changes. And what was cool, what's going to be cool 2-3 years ago isn't cool now, all that good stuff. But by the letter of the law, Kansas broke some major rules. And when the NCAA gave out their notice of allegations, they gave out the letter that basically says, here is what you are accused of, Kansas. Woo, they got hammered, baby, and they saw it a lot of the same ways that I've seen it over the last couple of years, is that Kansas really did break the rules. Included in that notice of allegations, 5 level 1 violations, which for a basketball program is an awful lot. Same as what Will Wade got at LSU, for the record. Included in it was lack of institutional control, which basically means that the NCAA says that they don't believe that Kansas did enough to stop Bill Self. Remember, not to get off subject here, but we talked about the Tennessee football investigation the other day, and Tennessee football was not hit with lack of institutional control. The NCAA basically said the opposite. We believe you guys and girls did everything that you could to help us close this case, and we're not going to punish the school, or I don't suspect they'll punish the school as much as they would have had they not. Well, Kansas was hit with lack of institutional control, and they were also hit with coach responsibility, which basically means that the NCAA believes that after they concluded their investigation, that Bill Self could have and should have done more to kind of slow down the rule breaking. And so it becomes very interesting when it comes to Kansas because they have these 5 level 1 violations, but for the most part, they've done absolutely nothing to try and comply and work with the NCAA. Remember, going back to all these FBI cases, think about how all these other schools handled their situation. Louisville fired Rick Pitino, fired their AD Tom Jurich, took a postseason ban a million years ago, but Louisville basically said, we screwed up, we want to work with you, we want to get this resolved, and it feels like Louisville is on the track to kind of just putting this behind them pretty soon. Arizona took a postseason ban, fired Sean Miller. They obviously fired their assistant coach, Book Richardson. Auburn took a postseason ban, fired an assistant coach. USC fired an assistant coach. And so you go on and on and on down the list of all of these schools who have worked together with the NCAA. And then there's Kansas, who not only did not work with the NCAA, let's take it a step further. They not only did not work with the NCAA, they have outright, as I said a minute ago, thumbed their nose at them and said, we are going to basically make this impossible for you. They have not fired any assistant coaches like all these other schools have. They have not fired Bill Self for sure. As a matter of fact, they gave him a lifetime contract, in case you remember. There was no postseason ban. And here's the other thing. They have very publicly gone back and forth with the NCAA. When the NCAA gave out that notice of allegations, Kansas had a very public response that basically said, we don't agree with anything you said. Here is part of what Kansas's response was when they got accused of all these things by the NCAA. Here is what they said, and this is a public document. You can find it online. The NCAA enforcement staff reply does not in any way change the University of Kansas's position that the allegations brought against our men's basketball program are simply baseless and littered with false representations. As the federal trial proved, Adidas employees intentionally concealed impermissible payments from the university and its coaching staff. The university has never denied these payments happened. For the NCAA staff to allege that the university should be held responsible for these payments is a distortion of facts and a gross misapplication of NCAA bylaws and case precedent. In addition, the enforcement staff assertion that Kansas refuses to accept responsibility is wrong. The university absolutely would accept responsibility if it is believed that the violations had occurred, as we have demonstrated with our own self-reported infractions. And so what Kansas basically said was, everything that you accused of, we just vehemently disagree with, and everything that, and we just don't believe that anything that you believe that we did, we actually did. And so again, for 2 seconds, let's compare how Kansas handled their situation with how everybody else did. Arizona, Auburn, Louisville, postseason ban. USC, Auburn, Arizona, Louisville, fired assistant coaches. Kansas, lifetime contract for Bill Self. No assistant coaches fired. I'm not saying somebody should be fired. I'm just saying. And they publicly called out the NCAA. And so that was their stance on all of this until the last couple weeks. And then, to bring it full circle, these past couple weeks, during the busiest time on the recruiting calendar for NCAA basketball, Kansas pulled its head coach and assistant coach off the road, and that means one thing and one thing only to me. Kansas is done fighting. Kansas has thrown their hands up. Kansas is waving the white flag. Kansas is saying uncle, and they are basically saying, NCAA, we are sorry for this 3-4 year public back and forth. What can we do to help the situation? Because to me, I can't take them pulling off the coaches as any other way of them now retroactively trying to say, look, see, we did something. Now, admittedly, it happened years after the initial allegations. It happened right after they won an NCAA title, so it's kind of like, we won our title, who really cares? But it does feel like Kansas is finally starting to acknowledge we did something wrong, and we're trying not to get killed by the NCAA over the next couple months as they come to a conclusion on our investigation. Now, what will be especially interesting is to try and figure out what is going to happen next with Kansas in this process. It's going to be fascinating to watch over the next couple weeks for a few reasons. Now, I will say a couple things. One, just based on the timeline of everything, I don't believe as though it is something that is going to be resolved. I keep saying the next few weeks, but it's probably the next few months, the next few years. I don't believe it's something that's going to be resolved before this season. So unless Kansas self-imposes an NCAA withdrawing from the NCAA tournament, a postseason ban, unless Kansas self-imposes an NCAA tournament ban, I do not expect Kansas to miss the 2023 NCAA tournament. I believe they will be in position to defend their title. Don't expect that. Don't expect something to come so quick where Kansas would not even be allowed in the NCAA tournament. But what will be especially interesting is to see what happens after that, right? Because a couple of things. One, we did talk about it a few weeks ago. A few days ago with the Jeremy Pruitt stuff. We did talk about the fact that the NCAA has said very publicly, they have changed some of their bylaws and they've changed the Constitution and all this good stuff. And one of the things that they are very much in favor of is to not punish the school and not punish current players who had nothing to do with the current situation that the school finds themselves in, or players that weren't involved when the school did what they did. Well, I think everybody can do some mental math. It's pretty clear that no one on Kansas in 2022-2023 was in the program when these rules violations happened in 2017 and 2018. And so what will be especially interesting to happen is this, is one, do they just get a postseason ban? Is this kind of is this in basketball, much like Jeremy Pruitt in Tennessee in football? Is this kind of the NCAA's last stand? Do they really come down hard on Kansas, especially because Kansas refused to cooperate, especially because Bill Self is the head coach? Or do they have leniency on the current players, but do they come down hard on Bill Self? And I do think that is a possibility. This is just a guess. I haven't talked to anybody in the NCAA. I haven't talked to anybody at Kansas, but I do think the NCAA, in what might be their last chance to really throw the book at somebody, I really do think they may use this opportunity as an example to really, really, really punish Bill Self as an individual and maybe Curtis Townsend, the assistant that was caught also on wiretap, more so than actually punishing the school itself. Maybe they do allow Kansas to not miss the NCAA tournament, but maybe we're looking at a lengthy suspension for Bill Self. Now, what's lengthy? I don't know. Previous NCAA investigations, it feels like 9 games, which is a third of the regular season in most cases. 9 games seems to be the threshold that has previously been used. Jim Boeheim got a 9-game suspension a few years ago. Larry Brown got a 9-game suspension when he was coaching at SMU. And so it'll be interesting to see because I can't sit here and say that I have a great feel, but if they want to come down on Bill Self, could it be the Sean Payton 1-year suspension? Could it be a half a season? Could it be 30 games and then he comes back for the postseason? Or could it be some combination of actually punishing the program since they didn't work with the NCAA and then punishing Bill Self? That part I don't know because it, again, conflicts with what the NCAA has said publicly, which is that they don't want to punish players that had nothing to do with the school, with whatever problems the school got into. So this is a fascinating story, and we'll continue to cover it kind of as it happens. I'm ready to get into college football, but you talk about a fascinating story. Bill Self pulled off the road for recruiting. It feels to me very much like Kansas realizes, whoa, buddy, we could be in trouble here as we get set. For the start of this coming season. I think Kansas realizes we tried to play tough with them. They're not backing down. They still hold the ultimate power at least for a few years. And the fact that Bill Self was pulled off the road, I think they realize something big is coming. I wouldn't be surprised if you're looking at a lengthy suspension for Bill Self. It won't get resolved in the next week, month, whatever. But at some point, I think Bill Self is going to have to pay the piper for this one.